Today's topic is about an axal tumor including red duct, sweat gland. So let's see the first case. This is a poroma. In low power, you may think sometimes really look like separated keratosis because we can see this epidermis kind of acanthosis, thickening of the epidermis. You may also even see this pseudohonsis structure, but some structure usually not seen in separated keratosis. That is, we call this poroma stroma. That is kind of hyalinizing stroma with this dilated blood vessel. So this is really characteristic for poroma. So other than this, what is other major difference? You can see this hole. Actually, this hole is red duct differentiation. Let's zoom in to take a look at this red duct. We can see this eosinophilic hyaline lines surrounding this duct. So this is red duct differentiation. Other than that, we can see this cell are really monotonous. The cytoplasm kind of pale. All the cells look identical, and then pale cytoplasm. Even the cell, if we have contrast, the cell is a little bit larger than the cells in separated keratosis. So combine all of these features, just like acanthosis, hyaline stroma with this dilated vessel, and then try to look for this red duct. That is really good for poroma, usually in the head and neck area. Let's see one more example of poroma. This one is a little bit different, kind of a little bit exophytic or also endophytic. And then this epidermis just have different kind of anastomosing connect to the dermis components. And even in low power, we appreciate that we have really well demarcated. We can see this is kind of normal epidermis. Then this pale area is the poroma cells area. So really well demarcated. We can see distinct difference between these two populations. And when we want to look at still in low power, we can see this poroma stroma with dilated blood vessel and hyalinizing stroma, really characteristic. Then we already know this cell kind of monotonous. Another important thing is we need to try to find any red duct differentiation. Like this one, look like a duct. So combine all of these features, this is another poroma. And then when we talk about more, you may also thinking about, could it be tricholamoma? I have the example of tricholamoma, and then let's keep this slide and then continue. Another poroma, even low power, we know this nodule just like exophytic, and then the dermal plaque has some connection to the epidermis, and that's the mosaic of this connection. Then this poroma stroma also catch your eyes, really hyalinized, pale stroma with this dilated blood vessel here. Then we also see this hole. I'm sure this is red duct differentiation. When you see this hole, tons of red duct differentiation. And then the cell kind of pale, cytoplasm really monotonous. Usually you would not see any polymorphism. If you see infiltrated border polymorphism, turn of mitosis, you will suspicious that it's pleural carcinoma. And one relative new immunostaining marker is NUT. They usually highlight this pleuroma and pleural carcinoma, but you need to pay attention that benign pleuroma and malignant, both of them can be stained with NUT NUT positivity. But NUT usually not positive in squamous cell carcinoma. So I think this is one of the helpful marker, but the sensitivity is not really good. It's around 60%. So if you want to prove this pleuroma not positive, that is helpful. But if not negative, you just could not rule out. And then another example of pleuroma, I just quickly recap. Acanthosis, well demarcated, pale, monotonous cell in the epidermis, stroma with dilated blood vessel, and then more important, you need to see this Achilles red duct cuboidal cell around forming this red duct differentiation. This is pleuroma. Let's keep this slide to just make a contrast. This one is tricholamoma. In low power, you may thinking, oh, really similar to the pleuroma, but here you can see a little bit difference. First, kind of warty looking, so the clinician usually submit this sample and then put the differential just like some wall, like differential for verrucas vulgaris. Then when you see this pale cytoplasm, kind of an even clear cytoplasm compared to the pleuroma, like this. In the pleuroma, they also have this eosinophilic cytoplasm, but in tricholamoma, you can see really clear cytoplasm because this is the differentiation from the hair follicle outer loop sheet component. Then when we zoom in, usually you would not see any red duct differentiation, but what catch your eye is in the periphery. From outside to inside, you can see this hyaline basement membrane thickening material. And then inside this material, you can see palisading, a little bit basaloid cell. So you can see the cytoplasm is clear. This cytoplasm is more like basaloid cytoplasm. They just like piggy fan palisading in the periphery. So combine all of these features, thickening basement membrane zone in the periphery, palisading cells in the periphery, inside clear cytoplasm, outer loop sheet differentiation. And then lower power, we can see kind of little bit warty looking. This is really good for tricholamoma. Let's see another example of tricholamoma. This one even more warty looking in low power. We can see really well demarcated tumor and periphery palisading of this basaloid cell. Outside you can see this thickened basement membrane material, and then inter you can see this clear cytoplasm. Combine all of these features, this is another tricholamoma. This one a little bit tricky, but even this case here, we have this a little bit traumatized, but low power we can also appreciate kind of warty looking. Then for this one, they just do a transection, so they leave a little bit tricholamoma part separate. But even in this periphery, you can appreciate that kind of well demarcated and eosinophilic basement thickened zone. And then we can find this palisaded basaloid cell. Then inside we can find this clear cytoplasm. So combine all of these features, this is another tricholamoma. This one a little bit different. Low power, you may also think of this is another tricholamoma. That's true because we can see all of these features. Well demarcated, maybe a little bit woody looking, not really like wall, but thickened basement membrane surround the lesion, then palisading cells in the periphery, combined of this clear looking cytoplasm cell. But another thing I would like to you to pay attention, this one is desmoplastic tricholamoma, because here you may see a little bit atypia of the cell. They also form this whirling structure that is squamous eddy. So if you just get a superficial shape, just like this, you may also think of, could it be top of well differentiated squamous cell carcinoma, because the cell look a little bit different. So anytime you see superficial shape, you need to think about that. Could it be desmoplastic tricholamoma, not just called squamous cell carcinoma strictly? You need to bear in mind this entity is benign entity, but if you go to high power, it's kind of scary, because this cell looks like infiltrated squamous cell, well differentiated squamous cell carcinoma, but actually this one is desmoplastic tricholamoma. So when you see the base, you are sure that this is well demarcated lesion, combine all of the feature, so you can make the final diagnosis as a benign. Okay, let's continue. Low power, we can see this tumor like from east to south. No, from east to west. So really thin lesion east to west. Then compared to the normal epidermis, we can see some core or strands of monotonous cells, just really distinct from the other epidermis. So this is the benign tumor part. And when we zoom in, we can see we have this palisading cell in the periphery, then pale cytoplasm monotonous cell inside. Combine all of these features, this is a tumor of follicular infundibulum, TFI. Why I want to talk about this entity after tricholamoma, because both of these two you can see in Cowden syndrome. That's the P10 loss syndrome. You will see multiple TFI tumor of follicular infundibulum and tricholamoma. So try to recognize this tumor really fast. You need to bear in your mind, anytime you can see this thin tumor from east to west, you need to bear in mind whether this is TFI. Let's see more example of TFI. You can see kind of east to west, really thin tumor. Compared to the normal epidermis, they have more dark cytoplasm, but this one we have this more pale cytoplasm, and then with this core or strands coming out in the dermis. Sometimes you may also see follicle hanging around this tumor. This is one more example. This one is really good because when you only see this part, you may also think of, is it a poroma or maybe a tracheoboma? But when you see this whole lesion kind of east to west, really thin, sometimes with follicle hanging around, with this pale cell with palisaded darker cytoplasm basaloid cell around, really distinct from the surrounding normal epidermis. So you can make diagnosis of tumor or follicular infundibulum. Let's move to another entity. This one also another pattern recognition. Even in low power, you can appreciate this as a enucleation sample. But if you draw a line to cross this tumor, kind of symmetric and well demarcated, so from this feature, really suspicious, just a benign tumor. What catch your eye is this dark area. Basaloid cell seems really hypercellular here. Let's zoom in what's going on. Look at this basaloid cell, primitive basaloid cell. You may think, oh, it should be something malignant. But from the architecture, we already know that it's to be benign. If you go to really high power to see cell, you will find tons of mitosis. The nucleus may be really tight, really hypercellular. But combined with other feature, this is primitive magical cell, basaloid magical cell. And then there are some cells kind of ischemic, so-called necrosis, because this cell lose their nucleus. We call this ghost cell. So combine this basaloid cell, ghost cell. Sometimes you may also see some stroma, including, let's try to find it, multinuclear giant cell, hyaline stroma, and even bone metaplasia. So combine this feature, magical primitive cell, ghost cell, sometimes find different kind of stroma, including multinuclear giant cell, bone, hyaline stroma. That one is really good for pilomatricoma, which is a benign entity. But if you see really polymorphic primitive cell, really big infiltrated border, cytology is really atypical, you may also suspicious for pilomatric carcinoma. Let's see more example of pilomatricoma. Even in low power, we know well demarcated basaloid cell, ghost cell. Let's find whether this example we can find some multinuclear giant cell. Ghost cell without the nucleus. This magical cell, usually we can find tons of mitosis, but it doesn't matter, it didn't change the benign entity. Ghost cell, basaloid cell. I still cannot find a really classic multinuclear giant cell, but yes, multinuclear giant cell, it's our friend. So combine all of these features, this is another pilomatricoma. Another example of pilomatricoma. Basaloid cell, ghost cell, highlighting stroma, well demarcated. We may have some bone, metaplastic bone. Maybe some multinuclear giant cell reaction, metaplastic bone, or calcification. So this is another example of pilomatricoma. Another one, I don't think we still need to zoom in. We just focus on low power to remember all the point. Basaloid cell, primitive, ghost cell. Sometimes you may find multinuclear giant cell. And then high power to make sure you do not find really atypical cell. But for this one, really well demarcated, I don't think it will fall into any malignancy category. Okay, let's move on. We can see kind of dilated like hair follicle, and then we have small follicle attached to this big hair follicle. So we use the buzzword mother follicle and the baby follicle. When you see this structure in low power, you make this diagnosis. This is trichofolliculoma. Remember mother follicle, baby follicle. Trichofolliculoma. And then I put this entity together for this one, kind of similar. We also see low power, we have this dilated hair follicle, but outside you do not see that baby follicle. All the outside just like some stretch out epidermis or maybe hair follicle component, but you do not really see the baby hair follicle. Just see this stretch out epidermis structure. Again, somewhat like dilated hair follicle, this stretch out core or strands epidermis connect together. This one is fibro. This one is trichofolliculoma. And then let's see another entity for this one. Because they are in the same family and usually they will put together, but this one is easy to make the diagnosis, but you just need to pay attention to the previous one. From the baby and mother follicle, that one is trichofolliculoma, and this one is fibrofolliculoma. Another similar entity, this one is trochodiscoma, and fibrofolliculoma and trichodiscoma, they're the same family. If you see multiple entity in the face, it is related to Burhoff-Dubé syndrome. So for this trichodiscoma, kind of look like a fibrofolliculoma when this lesion just cut deeper, the hair follicle just gone, and then what you get just this some stroma material just mimicking the stroma surrounding the hair follicle. I know to make this diagnosis is really tough. I don't think in the text they're gonna give you these diagnoses because some attending, just believe when you see this trichodiscoma, when you cut deeper, you will always see this dilated hair follicle, and then make the diagnosis of fibrofolliculoma instead of trichodiscoma. But I just would like to show you the classic one for the trichodiscoma. Let's see one more trichodiscoma. Here you can see, you cannot see that dilated hair follicle, but you can see this stroma surround the hair follicle, and then just this stroma forming this tumor called the trichodiscoma. I think this one is really good to make a contrast. In another piece, see this kind of stroma just lies somewhat surrounding this hair follicle. Really eosinophilic, spindle looking mesenchymal differentiation spindle cell forming this tumor. So this one is trichodiscoma. Remember, multiple lesion related to Burhock-Dubé. Burhock-Dubé is related to the mutation in the FLCN folliculin gene in 17p, and also related to renal oncocytoma, chromoform renal cell carcinoma. Let's move to the next one. This one is really funny one because we have the same component for the diagnosis in the cervical gland, that is polymorphic adenoma. Actually, this one just called a cutaneous mixed tumor, which look identical in the polymorphic adenoma. How to make the diagnosis? In low power, we can see this one is kind of well demarcated nodule in the dermis. And even in low power, we can know that the stroma is hyalinized, just like cartilage. So another name for this one, also chondroid syringoma. Whenever we use syringoma, that means we need to see red dark differentiation. That is what it is for this lesion. Except for this hyalinized myxoid mucin stroma, we can see all of these ducts. When we zoom in, this one is identical light red duct, because we have this cuboidal epithelial cell inside and then myoepithelial cell outside, two cell layer. All of this just light red duct. So when we see this red duct, well demarcated nodule with red duct differentiation, here we also can see some material looks like the acri gland secretes into this lumen, combined with hyaline myxoid chondroid stroma. It is really good for a mixed tumor. Let's see more example of mixed tumor. This one, low power, looks a little bit different because we have some fat entrapped, some fat inside, but it doesn't matter. First, well demarcated dermal nodule, and then we have this chondroid stroma, and then all of this whole to make us think of red dark differentiation. You can always zoom in to see this kind of two cell layer. Inner layer is the epithelial layer, outside layer is the myoepithelial layer. So this is another one, mixed tumor. Let's see more. This one we do not have the epidermis, just like enucleation. When the clinician try to scoop this lesion, the whole thing just pop out. Then this one, we still focus on several components. This one, the chondroid myxoid stroma kind of minimum, but we still can see this really nice sweat duct differentiation. Two cell layer, inner layer is the epithelial, outer layer is the myoepithelial. The resolution for this one is really bad, but this is another mixed tumor. Let's see one more. This one is really good for our chondroid stroma. We already can see this chondroid stroma, well demarcated nodule, then lot of sweat duct differentiation. Zoom in to see this two cell layer. So another really good one for chondroid syringoma, aka mixed tumor, aka polymorphic adenoma in the salivary gland. Let's continue. This one is kind of a old name of this diagnosis. And then the name of this one is acrosbiroma. I don't even remember I ever made this diagnosis. This is an old term to include poroma, which is the one we talked previously, and then also hydroadenoma. And then this one kind of combine of two of these entities. You can see monotonous cell anastomosis connect to the epidermis, but we also can see this dermal component, and in this dermal component we can see kind of sweat duct differentiation. So if you just see this dermal component, we will call this hydroadenoma. But if we have this multiple connection to the epidermis, monotonous cell, this poroma stroma with dilated blood vessel, this one is poroma, and combine two of these features, that is acrosbiroma. But I don't think it is wrong just call it poroma for this entity. So let's see the more classic one for the hidradenoma. Usually do not have any connection to the epidermis. Low power, kind of well demarcated, kind of symmetric dermal based lesion. And low power, we can see one component is kind of nodular, the other component kind of cystic. So that is classic feature for hidradenoma. We usually can see this cystic and solid nodule, but sometimes they just have cystic component, sometimes they just have nodular component. But when we zoom in, we can see this hyaline stroma, not like chondroid stroma in the mixed tumor. Then of course we can see some sweat duct differentiation. They also have some eccrine material, secretion material. So when you find this hyaline stroma, dermal nodule with sweat duct differentiation, that is really good for this hidradenoma or hydroadenoma. You can see all of this material just like the sweat duct secretion forming this cyst structure. See one more nodular and cystic hidradenoma. This one a little bit weird because it seems they have some connection to the epidermis, but it doesn't matter. Low power. We see this hyaline stroma and then with this cystic area and solid area. And zoom in, we can find some sweat duct differentiation. And in this dilated cystic structure, sometimes we can see this sweat duct material, just secret. So combine all of these features, well demarcated, solid, cystic, spread duct differentiation, hyaline stroma, the cell really monotonous, no atypia or mitosis. And then, another feature is that we also can see this clear cytoplasm, just mimicking the outer loose shape of hair follicle. Also, it's really good feature for the hydroadenoma. This one is called Hidradenoma Papilliferum. Actually, this lesion is usually small, less than 1 centimeter, and the usual location is in the genital area, especially in the vulva. It's just a nodule, well-demarcated nodule in the dermis. Even in low power, you can see this maze-like structure, just if you walk into this maze, you will never find a way to go out. So low power, you already have this impression. So high power, you would like to convert some of this structure. Actually, this is another like sweat duct differentiation, because we always can see this two-cell layer. Inner layer is a cuboidal cell. Sometimes you can also see hobnail, just like apical gland differentiation. But inside, we also have this myoepithelial cell. So combine this maze-like structure and this ductal differentiation, two-cell layer, epithelial cell inside and myoepithelial cell outside. That's really good for Hidradenoma Papilliferum. And then also this is really good location for genital area. First, we do not have really thick cornea layer, and then the dermis is really edematous, like we have a lot of this space and tons of dilated blood vessel. So there's really no hair follicle structure, so that is really good for a genital area, especially in the vulva. So if you know that is from the vulva, with this maze-like structure, two-cell layer, ductal differentiation, that's really good for Hidradenoma Papilliferum. I just show you more example. Maze-like structure, high power, you can see they have kind of two-cell layer. This one, they have more of this papillae structure, but it doesn't matter. When you see this duct, they will look like two-cell layer, epithelial cell and myoepithelial cell. No dramatic atypia. Well demarcated nodule in the dermis. That is Hidradenoma Papilliferum. Of course, the vulva genital location is really helpful. This is another one, but kind of this is just broken, but we can still see, if we can get the whole thing, we can see this like maze-like structure, and then two-cell layer forming this duct, epithelial cell and myoepithelial cell. So this is another good one for Hidradenoma Papilliferum. One more example, they also look like the same. Dermal nodule with this maze-like structure. Then this one, I think, had kind of eosinophilic cytoplasm, kind of like apical gland differentiation in this area, And then this one is the classic spread gland differentiation. Well demarcated lesion may slide structure to cell layer. Really good for Hidradenoma Papilliferum. Then we have another almost look like identical lesion. This one is called SCAP. The full name is Syringocystadenoma Papilliferum. Actually, this tumor is identical to the Hidradenoma Papilliferum. The only difference is this SCAP, Syringocystadenoma Papilliferum, usually in the scalp. And then you can see kind of like invaginated growth. Usually it connects to the epidermis, not just like a dermis nodule, but when we zoom in, we can still see our friends, two-cell layer, epithelial cell, and myoepithelial cell. Then we usually can see tons of plasma cell inside in the stroma. So epithelial cell, myoepithelial cell forming two-cell layer, and the location in the scalp, plasma cell inside, really good for scalp. Another example, Syringocystic adenoma papilliferum. When you see this invaginated growth, kind of like papillae area, but when you zoom in, you can see this two-cell layer. Inside, you can see tons of plasma cell. That is another example of SCAP. SCAP, that is the abbreviation for this Syringocystadenoma Papilliferum. This one is really funny. I remember I still have another lecture of nevus spacious. So this one, we know that this is in the scalp because we can see this big hair follicle down deep into the subcutaneous fat. Then in this scalp lesion, here we can see tons of apocrine differentiation. This area. Then we are suspicious whether this is nevus spacious, but on top of this area, we can see this invagination growth kind of structure like scalp. So we need to zoom in to find our friend, two-cell layer, and then plasma cell in the stroma. So this is a scalp growth with a nevus spacious. But for the nevus spacious part, it's not really classic because I do not see tons of spacious gland. Instead, we see a lot of this apocrine differentiation. And then for the nevus spacious, always bear in mind they will lose hair follicle. So you can see this area, there are no hair follicle in this area. Also here as well. But I still would like to see tons of spacious gland open just in the epidermis. But for the scalp diagnosis, this one is really clear. So this is another scalp diagnosis in the scalp. And then we have this invaginated growth lesion. Then try to find our plasma cell, tons of it. Then two-cell layer, epithelial and myoepithelial layer, two-cell layer, just forming this structure. So that is another good example when you see this nice plasma cell, and then you can make diagnosis of Syringocystadenoma Papilliferum.